screen. Okay. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I'm going to talk about a few things. One is research program that we have going on jointly with, there's 8 universities across the Commonwealth that are involved in this 5-year National Science Foundation study on natural hazards. And we're very pleased at Western to be one of the principals. We have 2 of the 7 programs that we're administering out of WKU. And I wanted to provide an overview because this is well, if the technology works, this works. All right. There we go. Okay. So there's 7 projects that make up CLIMBS, which really CLIMBS is a very clunky acronym, but it's looking at climate affected disasters across Kentucky. And it has nothing to do with climate change or climate change causes. We're not involved in any of that side of the thing. We're looking at facts of the disasters that have happened historically and what we can do with that. Project 1 is one that is led out of Bowling Green. Dr. Zach Soriano is the lead on it. And looking at, through our meteorology program, our Disaster Science Operations Center, we're looking at building information about weather in Kentucky from a historical perspective, and looking at the climate trends, both climate and weather in that. And going back historically, 1790 was one reference that our students found, the Ohio River freezing over. So we're going back a ways. But this one is really geared to building ultimately better models to be able to predict what we're doing with climate weather based on historic data and current conditions. So there's we have about 12 students working on this, undergrad and grad. We're getting a lot of undergrad engaged in research, which is tremendous. Project 2 is headed up by the Kentucky Geological Survey out of UK. They're looking at the perspectives of history around flooding, particularly in eastern Kentucky, and the impacts of that flooding. So, oh, thank you. Yeah, I like to walk it.
Actually, no, got it for you.
That one's not on.
No,
Nope.
I've got one back there.
Test. Okay. Wait a minute. I think I got it now. We're good. Yeah, we're good. All right. Sorry about that. So, I affectionately refer to these guys as the dirt people, those of you that are Big Bang Theory fans, because that's where they spend their time, it is great work. You can see them. This is in eastern Kentucky at one of the rivers. Actually, it's in Erwin, Tennessee, but it's one of the tributaries of our rivers. But they're going down and then excavating, looking back up to over 1,000 years at flood events. And they can look at the strata of the dirt, determine this happened. They can date it and build a picture back long before records were ever held with that. So pretty impressive work. Project 3 is looking at Kentucky's water supply. And this is something that we think about flooding, but we don't think about as much in eastern Kentucky, particularly. The aftermath of that flood is getting safe drinking water. That's one of the biggest challenges. And those are in public health recognize that. So this group is looking at building better models, looking at a plan for aquifer storage, being able to look at the impacts of seismic events on those storage areas and trying to build a more robust, safe water supply. And so there's a lot of things that are going into this around that whole process. Flood prediction, again, going back to sort of like the paleo side, but this is real time, looking at early flood warnings and trying to get a picture. And these all came out of the 2022 Eastern Kentucky floods. When you think about it, Eastern Kentucky has major flood events 22, 23, 24, and 25. So it's annual. And so they're looking at the impacts of mining, logging, roads, vulnerabilities, looking at all of those, the infrastructure impacts and all of that goes with it. The ultimate goal with this group is, again, early warning. How do we take the predictive models that our guys are doing in one to look at precipitation rates and all of that, coupled with this work and coupled with the historical data, to build AI-driven models that will look at everything going on coming into, it's going to rain 2 days from now. It's been raining for 3 weeks ahead of this. We got problems, to be able to get people advanced warning, to be able to move to higher ground and to do that. Again, a lot of the impacts from the 22 flood, particularly, and how that fits. You look at the 25 flash flood events. There were 15 fatalities. Most people aren't even aware of it because it didn't make the national news the way the 22 did. But when you look at 7 inches in 5 days, that does not sound like a lot of rain. I mean, it's a lot of rain, but not a lot of rain. In my end of the world, from Bowling Green West, it's no big deal. This part of the world, it's a big deal. And so they're looking at how those impacts fit. Again, one of the things is this near stream infrastructure resilience. We looked at 22, the number of fire stations, medical facilities, all those things that were taken out in the floods, and the recovery time to get those services back. And you guys, again, in public health are well aware of that. So we're looking at a combination of things to be able to do this modeling. Again, try to convince, in some cases, to relocate these facilities, to higher ground. But again, it's tough to get people to uproot, and we're going to have funding and stuff to help with that. Looking at mitigation tools, again, part of what they're doing with these prototypes, they've got targeted locations, looking at sensors to be able to map over time how this works. I know Whitesburg is one of the key sites that they're studying. They've got stream sensors. We're working with them right now with a consortium out of the University of Oregon on some additional monitoring equipment we may be able to bring to bear to that to measure rainfall and those things to help correlate with what they're doing in the streams. Landslide impacts. Again, not a big issue in my end of the world, as we've got rolling hills and more flat land, but in Eastern Kentucky, landslides are a big deal. They constantly take out roads. They endanger lives. So there's interesting group out of UK that's leading this. They've installed sensors and weather stations in Eastern Kentucky in different areas. I think I got a map here in a minute. This shows them installing sensors. They're pretty small units, but they measure precipitation. They look at solar radiation, air temperature, vapor pressure, all of these things. And they also monitor movement of the slope. They're also using LiDAR, and they're using satellite imagery, which is pretty neat because they're actually looking at taking these ultra high resolution satellite images that can take a snapshot and then take a shot tomorrow and the next day and detect movement from a satellite of just micro level. So pretty interesting pieces. I think one of the interesting things is Hazard Library. They saw a major elevation change between 2012 and 2023 for the building. So, and this was one of the case studies they're doing. And then they've got all the neat modeling. And I will say this, and I tell my UK colleagues this all the time. It was a $23 million grant. They got 13.7. So they should have all the cool tools. That's one of the things I tell them. So, but this group is really is doing a lot of interesting work. And this just shows some of the LiDAR and be able to do those comparative studies and pick up on movement again, which is 6 is looking at, this is an interesting one, again, led by Sebastian Bryson, who's the head of engineering at UK, looking at resiliency and interdependencies again, which fits into our wheelhouse from a prevention standpoint, fits into public health wheelhouse. But really looking at what are those between architecture frameworks and all the other interdependencies around communities. And then looking at vulnerability models for that critical infrastructure, transportation, critical networks, and human factors. And this is really more of a high level, sort of a sociological based study, but it's interesting tying the disaster science side of it with the people side, which I think is very important. This is the study area that they've carved out, looking at the Kentucky River Ad District. They're working with utilities from telephone, internet, power, to be able to measure interruptions in this test area and start looking at how those things fit. Roads and infrastructure, obviously, huge impacts, because if you drive, as the old saying goes, drive into the hollow, the bridge washes out, you're in the hollow. You're not going anywhere. So these are things that we have to look at. So they're looking at risk levels from very low up to be able to prioritize where these are, and then looking at things like houses and bridges and more the low-lying hollers and how that fits. One of the other things too is they're really taking a look at response and infrastructure, because we get in rural America, the fire departments are all volunteer and they're doing multiple hats. A lot of times they're doing first response medical, they're doing EMS, they're doing a lot of things, and they're all volunteer. So when you have a major impact like this, being able to support them is, again, very important. And Project 7 is one I'm leading. Really is a twofold project, 7.1, 7.2. 7.1, we're looking at, again, not the weather models, we're looking at actual event chronology. We've gone back to about 1900 and pulled data on all kinds of severe weather. We're mapping that by county and where these impacts were. The National Weather Service data goes back to about 1952 or 53. So students have had to go back, search newspaper archives, and it's really neat to watch the kids when you give them that project. And I got a couple working on tornadoes. So they go back and they do searches. They do their Google search, their AI searches. They find historic tornado references. Then they figure, well, it hit this county. What's the local newspaper? So then they're calling that newspaper and finding literally photocopied articles of those and getting those sent. So it's really an Easter egg hunt, I call it. And I told them I'll give them chocolate at the end. It's one of those things. But it's very important when you look at those impacts, being able to bring that data to bear. The second part of 7.1 is looking at risk assessments. The state commonized a risk assessment process through emergency management a few years ago, and we just surveyed EMs. I got 46 of the 120 response, which I thought was decent, but just how they viewed that risk assessment tool as EMs. Was it usable? And it was in the mid upper threes on a 5 scale. But I just presented the data to the assistant director at a meeting last week. And I said, this shows us where we need to take it to the next level to make it more actionable. Because one of the key things, the questions I asked, do you feel like the information you have gives your leadership what they need in the county to make decisions? And that was, again, in the threes. So that should be a lot higher. And so we're going to work with them. The good news is we're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're going to take what they've commonized and we're going to look at ways to tweak it and improve it as part of that study. Second, we looked at warning systems on the same survey tool. We split it, and I asked them about their outdoor warning and other systems. Outdoor warning is a real pet peeve for me, because I think this day and age, I think it is a necessity, but I think people get very confused, because I have outdoor warning on campus and also have a state-of-the-art text messaging system and all these things that we do. Inevitably, when we test ours with the county, and when I test the outdoor warning, I get the phone call. Well, I was in the basement of so-and-so building. I didn't hear it. I said, good. What do you mean good? It's outdoor warning. It's not indoor warning. And so I've had to back up and say, okay, I got to do a better job of educating the public. Outdoor warning systems are incredibly expensive to install and maintain. They're great if you've got public parks, if you've got a small downtown area, those kind of things, as to warn people that are outside. But you have to come up with better ways. One of the counties in our area did a study. They were going to do a grant to put in outdoor warning. It was like $5 million. They got a $250,000 grant and bought everybody in the county a weather radio. Problem solved. And they still have outdoor warning in the town, center, and they use it to alert fire department and the multi-use type use. But I thought that was very novel because they said there's no way we're going to get the money to put outdoor warning around the county. And if you're out in farmland where you've got a house every 3 miles, it does not make sense. So, and particularly when you look at when do we really need it, it's at night. And when you have night weather, and it doesn't work. So for people inside homes. So that's why we're really looking at the outdoor warning. We'll take that to the next step. What is the total warning picture? What can we do with that? And then 7.2, this is co-chaired with UK and U of L Computer Science. They are doing some really interesting studies using AI and big data on a couple of fronts. One, they're looking at how they can scan social media streams before, during, and after disasters to pick up key situational awareness. And some of the initial things with some of the events have been pretty amazing. The roof blew off my garage. Then there's trees down on this road. Those are all actionable things that can be rolled into that local emergency manager to help with their situational awareness. Easy. But then somebody tweets something unrelated, but the AI picks up that it's related, and you're sitting there going, what is this? They're learning, they're training the models now to be more discerning based on the type of event. So I've worked with them and quite a bit. And then the goal with this is to turn that situational awareness then to be able to automatically send out alerts on social media about areas to avoid or potential threat areas and those kind of things. So there's more to come on that. They're actually taking our historical data and using it as part of their building base. All these things sort of interconnect. So we're moving into year 3. And so I think in year 3 and 4 of the 5 years, we're really going to see that take a real turn and be a very positive thing. This just shows some of our mapping of events. What caused fatalities, looking at weather related. Again, heat is the number one. The straight line winds, flooding, those are your 3. Tornadoes aren't even on the right. Now, we take a year like 2021, we had 70 fatalities and 2 storms, counting Bowling Green and Mayfield. Those have impact. But when you look at that chart, only goes to 19, but you see that other blip. But we look at things like ice. We look at other things that fit. So we're looking at how do we tie that in. And then the other piece is, and one of our grad students is working on it right now, is how to take bias out of this, like Fayette and Jefferson counties. You got so much population density that there's a bias, that compared to, Magoffin County or Ballard County. So she's done some really neat work with AI to try to correct for those biases. And it's starting, as we run different models, starting to pan out to give us a more true list across. These again, just showing some additional information. So very happy with that. I'm going to click through. These are the ones I've already described about the survey. I'd like just to wrap up talking about our DSOC Center. We did a presentation several years ago to this group. We launched the center in 2022, and we are just really ecstatic about what we've been able to do with this. We've grown from our original Intel lab, which is where Harmony's sitting there, which is our, we can monitor weather globally with that. We developed a collab for outreach and education. We're building out in our regional campuses, DSOC centers. We just launched our Air Lab, which is AI driven. We got a professor in August, Dr. Singh, who's heading that up, and he's doing some phenomenal work with that. And then we launched out of our innovation campus, our DSOC professional services group, which is looking at supporting, whether it be school districts, businesses, hospitals, with weather data. So there's a lot of folks out there pay a lot of money to third-party weather companies to get data. And we can do that for about a third of the cost. And the money all goes back into the students. So if anybody knows somebody or has interest, we'd be happy to do it. We just did our 4th Cherry Blossom Festival in DC. We've done our 4th Chicago Marathon in October. We do all the concerts and events on campus. And we did Louder Than Life in Louisville last year, working with the National Weather Service. So we do partner with them. But we actually put boots on the ground. The Cherry Blossom we do virtually. That's over 3 weeks. But we do that out of our center and with their command center in DC. So we can do virtual or the other. And if there's any questions, there's my email, and Dr. Durkees will be glad to help. And last but not least, back in 2019, we launched a couple of certificate programs in emergency management and disaster science, 12 credit hour programs designed to be co-credentials, whether it was public health or sports and recreation management or communications. A lot of students grab this certificate because it gives them the instant management side of things. It gives them natural technological hazard experience as well as planning. Starting this fall, just excited as all get out. We're launching a Bachelor of Science in Disaster Science and a new Master's. One of the things with the Master's, if you are a career professional and you have certifications or prior experience or prior learning, we can give you up to 12 hours credit towards that Master's. And which I'm getting a lot of military folks, a lot of law enforcement folks, healthcare and others, and be glad to work with anybody on that. So, and you don't have to pay for those 12 hours. That's the other good news. So it takes the cost of that master's degree down greatly. And we're really excited about being able to roll that out. And I will say unofficially, we are pushing for next fall to have a practical doctorate, Doctor of Science, and a PhD. So those are in the works. I can't really officially announce those because we're just starting, but we're tickled to death with that as well. Are any questions? All right. I think I put us sort of back on time, Steve. And
David, I think we got some
oh,
questions.
Sure. Yes, ma'am.
Have you had any exposure to the fortified roof grants that are being rolled out in Kentucky? I was looking up some information about them, and there's a lot of questions that I would have that I'm not really finding answers to, but it sounds like a really good program for people to have an opportunity to have up to $10,000 to put toward a roof that meets the fortified roof designation, which is apparently quite a bit more.
That is a very good point. I am not familiar with it, but I know other states that have done it. I wasn't aware we had that program, but yeah, they're going back to they basically use the hurricane standard for roofs, and they come back and tie the roofs into the main structure so the roof doesn't just fly off. It gives it more of a unified structure, and they hold up a lot better. And particularly in a lot of places, that can mean the difference in life and death. So I'm glad you brought that up. I will look into that myself because that's something that I know I'll have more questions on. But I know in other states they've done those grant programs for people that really means a lot to be able to go in and get a roof reinforced and again definitely could make the difference, you know, in life or death in some of these storms, particularly straight line wind as much as tornadoes. Because you look at the number of deaths from straight line winds across the country, a lot higher, obviously. I was telling somebody the other day, I've had 3 people I've worked with in my 40 years who have lost family members to trees. Yeah. And it's one in Michigan, 2 in Kentucky. And us being a tree campus, that's something that we try to really emphasize to students. on windy days is you don't need to be out in your hammock hanging under all the trees. We put a lot of our grounds folks, we've actually got an arborist on staff, and she goes around, she looks like a bird watcher with her binoculars, but she goes out both in the early spring and fall, looks for dead limbs, marks them, and we get tree services come in and take them out preemptively because we've had some close calls. And but it's an excellent point. Reinforcement, infrastructure reinforcement is very critical. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yep.
These are very cool and timely AI projects at WK. I'm sorry. These are very cool and timely AI projects at WKU. Thank you for sharing. It will be exciting to see the county weather related forecasts to help prevent life lost.
Well, I agree, and I am not the AI king. I guarantee you, I struggle with ChatGPT, but watching somebody program AI is phenomenal. And I just wrote the PO for Dr. Singh's first AI computer. It's a desktop PC that was $35,000 with NVIDIA chips, and he already called after he got up and running. It was running like 100 and something degrees Celsius. You know, it was already overheated, so we had to move it into a cooler environment. So the whole different realm of computing, and these guys are incredible. My colleagues at UK and U of L, I have talked with them continually, and then I have to report out on their work, which usually is about an hour-long Zoom, going, okay, put it in my language so that I can relate this. So, but it's phenomenal, and I just look at what our guys have done in the last semester, and it's been crazy. Any other questions? All right. Thank you. We'll move to the next. All right. Next up, we have the introduction to the Connect resources, and she's here. So have you got your...
Well, I sent slides. I didn't
Oh,
know if they were.
Steve, did you send, have you got her slides?
Either way.
Let me get mine out of here.